Last episode, we won the Copa del Rey with Villarreal and the Bundesliga with Bayer Leverkusen to add 2 more trophies to our cabinet. But we still have 8 to win with 12 seasons to go. Currently, there aren't any jobs available, so we're going to stick it out with Bayer Leverkusen and try to win the DFB Pokal. But if a good job does come up, we are going to have to seriously consider it. In the meantime, we have 53 million to add better depth to our team. And given that Jack Grealish is retiring, we replaced him with Jose for £16.75 million from Real Madrid to be back up to Estaval. We then signed Victor Christiansen for £27 million from Inter Milan to add some more quality at left back. Centre back Cossonau asked to leave the club, which was very handy as I was going to sell him anyway. Thankfully, Newcastle paid us £37 million to take him off our hands, giving us the £20 million we needed to sign his replacement, Gabriel Castro from Boca Juniors. Things were looking superb, but then disaster struck. Our best player and top scorer, Matteo Corti, left the club for his release fee clause of £79 million to Arsenal. So if the Arsenal job does come up, I will be applying. But this seriously damages our hopes of winning the DFB Pokal this season. Luckily though, we have a lot of money to sign a replacement. But when we saw Matthias Tell was transfer listed for just 15.75 million at Bayern Munich, it felt wrong if we didn't go for him. So in he comes on a cut price deal to compete with Marcos Leonardo. And just as I thought our window was coming to an end, Al Hilal bid 41, rising to 51 million for 32-year-old Morten Hulmand. It's an offer we couldn't refuse, especially when I negotiated up to 60 million. So to replace him, we paid £65 million for Gianmarco Fatacanti from Everton to conclude our business in what ended up being a very busy window. But things are about to get more crazy, because less than an hour after signing Fatacanti, completely out of the blue, Arsenal have offered me a job interview. That's because a day earlier, Arteta left the current Champions League holders Arsenal to join PSG. Plus, they've also finished in the Premier League's top 2 each of the last 3 seasons. So now my thinking has completely changed. We could join a complete Arsenal squad, who just won the Champions League and have signed arguably the best striker in the world off us at Bayer Leverkusen. There's a real chance we could do the English double in just 1 season. So really, we have to do the interview. Despite being English, they are concerned I haven't managed there before. And you know exactly what I'm going to say. That's right, subscribe to the channel, please. They're also asking why I've only managed at 3 clubs, so I've decided to tell them that I'm loyal, which was a good answer because they then asked me if I would be at the club for the long haul. I lied and promised them I would be. I will do anything for a transfer budget of 170 million. The issue is, I've just spent so long completing this transfer window at Bayer Leverkusen and I'm really invested in the team. But Arsenal are now offering me the job and I have no idea what to do. Emotionally, I'm with Leverkusen. But logically, to have a better chance of completing the Glory Hunter challenge, we've got to go to Arsenal. So, I'm now a gunner. But there is an issue, as 6 of our starting 11 are 29 and over. So if we want to win the Premier League and FA Cup, it needs to be this season. Martin Odegaard scored the first goal of our reign at Arsenal, whilst our old friend Corti scored the second in a 5-0 win on the opening day against Sunderland. However, I did lose my first North London derby 1-0 away from home. But Wes Fofana got us back to winning ways against Manchester United, whilst Corti was making himself a candidate for the league's top scorer with the only goal of the game in a win over Newcastle. In general, we'd had a kind start to the season, avoiding the likes of Man City, Liverpool and Chelsea to top the table a third of the way through the season, exactly where we need to be. However, our results against the top sides weren't great. Heading into the 90th minute, we were drawing 1-1 with Chelsea. But luckily for us, we thought we'd scored the winner in the 94th, only for Chelsea to equalise 3 minutes later and draw the match. Liverpool were the better side when they came to the Emirates, and we were very lucky to get an equaliser in the 91st minute to pick up a point. But Erling Haaland gave Man City all 3 points when we travelled up north. We did manage to secure a 4-0 win in the North London derby at home, and big spenders Newcastle were brushed aside 3-0. So despite dropping some points, we were still outperforming the other top teams, meaning we have a huge 11-point lead over Man City after just 23 games, although they do have a game in hand. But whilst the Premier League is going really well, the same can't be said for the Champions League. We ended up losing to our former club Bayer Leverkusen, as well as suffering defeats to Inter Milan and drawing with another one of our former clubs, Juventus. This means we finish 11th in the league phase and have to go through an extra knockout round. Here we managed to batter Lazio, only for us to then get battered by Bayern in the round of 16. Good job we aren't particularly fussed about the Champions League, as we've already won it. Obviously our focus was the Premier League. Adam Wharton scored a brace in an important 2-0 win away against Manchester United. Courtie scored himself a hat-trick in a 5-0 win over West Ham, whilst Bukayo Saka helped us to a 3-0 victory against Bristol City. So, with 4 games to go, we have a 10-point lead over Man City, and if we win our next game at home against Chelsea, we win the title. 3 minutes in and we had a golden opportunity, but somehow Ødegaard just couldn't get the ball in the back of the net. But he is more of a provider, so when he slotted the ball through to Saka, I started celebrating, only for Bukayo to hit the post. Then Courtie thought he'd have a go, but even he couldn't score, and somehow we were still stuck at 0-0. But moments before half-time, we finally broke the deadlock, as Saka volleyed in an effort from a clear corner to put one hand on the title at half-time. An hour into the game and we pretty much put our second hand on the trophy, as substitute Bosniak scored from distance to double our lead. There was one Chelsea highlight in the game, which came in the 79th minute when Moises Caicedo was allowed to shoot, but he put it miles over the crossbar. We've been very lucky we got to manage this ready-made Arsenal team, because as we lift the Premier League trophy, it's been the easiest one for us to win and to add to our cabinet. Now we just need to add the FA Cup, which we could also still win. After beating Bristol Rovers 7-2 in the third round, we had to rely on Bosniak to score the only goal of the game to beat Newcastle in the fourth round. We then had a chance to batter Grimsby Town 6-0 in the fifth round, which was fun to do as I am a Lincoln City fan. But in the quarters, we drew 0-0 with Chelsea, meaning we had to go to penalties. And our keeper saved Chelsea's first 2 penalties, putting them on the back foot. And we didn't miss ours, which means Declan Rice's goal sends us to the semis. Against Fulham, Bukayo Saka opened up the scoring 11 minutes into the game, and just before half-time, we doubled our lead thanks to a dreadful Fulham own goal. Thanks to Ødegaard early in the second half, we then extended our lead to 3. However, Fulham weren't done, as they pulled a goal back in the 67th minute and fought on to capitalise from a defensive mistake to score a second in the 90th minute. But luckily for us, full time arrived before they could add a third. So now we take on Leicester to see if we can do the domestic double. Less than 60 seconds into the game, we forged the first chance of the match, as left-back Elunga worked the ball into the area and the cross almost ended up in the back of the net. But literally 30 seconds later, Leicester worked the ball down their left-hand side, got it central, and showed us how it was done, opening up the scoring and putting us on the back foot. This left us a little bit shell-shocked, as we didn't know how to react. Until we got lucky, as Leicester messed around on the ball and our high press meant that Wharton won the ball, played a 1-2 with Martinelli, and then scored with a shot from distance in off the crossbar. This gave us our mojo back, and once again, we were a free-flowing team, getting the ball into Courtie, who did what he did best and gave us the lead in the 32nd minute. After the break, we were the far better side, with Adam Wharton being the star. But his effort from distance went just wide off the mark. But Leicester looked like they were going to get themselves back in the game. But we just about managed to clear the cross and quickly counter up to the other end of the pitch. Finding a ball to Courtie, who took it to the byline, he took a shot and it somehow went in the back of the net, extending our lead. To Leicester's credit, they kept pushing, but every time they committed men forward, we were able to punish them on the counter-attack. Once again, getting it forward with pace, finding Courtie and scoring our 4th goal of the game to put the result beyond all doubt. especially when the Leicester heads dropped and we got ourselves a 5th goal. It turns out leaving Bayer Leverkusen was the best decision we've made during the Glory Hunter Challenge, as we've managed to tick off both English trophies in a single season. So now we can focus on winning some other trophies elsewhere, but the only issue is there aren't any desirable jobs available right now. Now normally I would say it's more advantageous to keep your job and look for another one whilst you're still managing the team. But I've got another 3 years on my contract at Arsenal worth £110,000 per week, and not many clubs will be able to afford to buy me out of the contract. So I'm going to resign from Arsenal to give myself the best chance of getting a new job. But obviously this is going to take some time, and nothing good comes up until November. I really want the Marseille job, but it would take a bit of a rebuild. But if anyone can beat PSG, it is this lot. However, I can't apply for the job, only declare interest. So I tell the media I see the club's potential, and I'm now the favourite for the job. But it turns out the reason that I couldn't apply was because Marseille already had a man in mind. Patrick Vieira takes the Marseille job. So we need to look elsewhere. And it might be Sevilla. It's less attractive from a La Liga standpoint, which we still need to win, but they are in the Europa League and currently sit 3rd in the league phase. So I applied, much to the delight of the fans who apparently adore me. Thankfully, I was given an interview. Apparently, my half a season unemployed is too long, but I convinced them I was just waiting for the right club. But when asked if I can turn the team around, I did let my ego get the better of me, and I told them just look at my impeccable reputation. But they did seem to like that, as just a few days later, a job offer was on the table and I was appointed Sevilla manager. The team are currently 13th in La Liga, but there's enough time to turn that around and push for a European spot. Obviously though, our focus is on the Europa League, where we've already qualified for the knockout rounds. We have a very good keeper in Luan and a very fast dribbly boy in Cristiano, but he can't really cross or shoot. There's also a lot of really old players who are now way past it. So if we stay longer than just this season, we're going to have to do a total rebuild of the Sevilla team. Fortunately, we arrived just before the start of the January transfer window. So before our first game, we signed wonderkid Gustavo for 20 million from Gremio, and wonderkid winger / striker Philip Kubik for just 4.8 million pounds from Partizan. Anyway, we're going to have a baptism of fire here because our first game in charge is against Real Madrid. So it's my debut as well as that of Gustavo and Kubik, who managed to get a goal in his first game, an incredible moment if we didn't lose 4-2. Madrid, by the way, are managed by Ange Postecoglou, which I absolutely adore. Our final January signing was Vlad Dumitru for £3.5 million from Voluntari in Romania to add some depth at left back. It's a shame. Hopefully we won't be at the club by the time all these wonder kids actually mature. But they're very good right now, and they were the most cost-effective players to bring into the club. Now luckily for us, we did win our second game in charge as we thrashed Espanyol 4-1. We then won our final 2 Europa League games against Wolfsberger 2-0, and then recorded a monumental 9-0 win against Sheriff Tiraspol, with 3 of our new signings getting themselves on the score sheet. This means we finished the league phase in 4th place. But despite the big wins, the players are still learning my tactics, and suffered defeats to Zaragoza, Atletico Madrid, and Mallorca. Our first Seville derby against Betis ended as a 1-1 draw, with both goals being scored early in the first half. But then things started to fit together nicely, as we scored from set pieces to beat Rayo Vallecano 3-0, and then battered Real Valladolid 4-0 at our place. In fact, since a dodgy January, we'd gone on a 9-game unbeaten run that saw us rise at the table to 9th place, 6 points away from the top 7 with a game in hand. We do need to make sure we finish in the European places in case we don't win the Europa League. In the round of 16, we travelled to Feyenoord, scored twice in the first 60 minutes, and looked like we were cruising to victory. That was until the Dutch side scored twice in the 90th minute to pull back a very frustrating draw. But thankfully in the second leg, our new boy Kubik assisted all 3 of our goals as we put Feyenoord to the sword and beat them 3-1 on the night to progress to the quarterfinals. However, Borussia Dortmund opened up the scoring as we messed around at the back. It took until the 67th minute for us to work our way back into the game and claw back a goal, only for us to then collapse again a minute later and concede another goal, which was followed up by a very decent Dortmund move for the Germans to win 3-1 on the night. And the game in Dortmund was going to be even more difficult for us. In fact, they beat us 1-0 and they knocked us out of the tournament. So now we really need to finish in the top 7 for European football, else we may have shot ourselves in the foot by joining Sevilla. Luckily, we got back to winning ways in La Liga with a 3-0 win against Mallorca, a really important 2-1 win over Real Sociedad, and an impressive 2-0 win against Granada. However, we did end up losing to Athletic Club as they scored in the 94th minute. But in our penultimate game of the season, we took on Barcelona, who scored first through Evan Ferguson. But we battled hard and managed to draw the game with a late goal of our own. This means with 1 game to go, we now sit 2 points behind our city rivals Real Betis in the final European spot. So as long as we win and they lose, we take 7th place. The issue is, we play runaway title winners Real Madrid, and they play mid-table Granada. So if this is going to work out for us, we need a miracle. And that miracle isn't Thuram scoring 9 minutes into the game for Real Madrid. But the ball fell to Vlad Dumitru, who drove into the area and managed to get us an equaliser. And then late in the game, Isaac Romero, who was left completely unmarked, allowed him to power home a winner, giving us all 3 points. Against the odds, we defeated the La Liga champions, despite them being the better side on the night. But what about Betis? Well, Granada beat them 1-0, which means we sneak ourselves into 7th place and secure a Conference League spot for next season. So now we have £37 million to build a squad capable of winning the tournament. This was then doubled when Al Ettifaq bid £36 million for 33-year-old Isaac Romero, which obviously we accepted. After a few more sales of older players and releasing a few others, we have £100 million to spend and £500,000 a week in wages. So I spent nearly all of it on 8 new players. Notably, our new best centre-back Bastian for £19.5 million from Bristol City, as well as Julian Ors for £17.75 million from Villarreal. He was our backup striker there when we were the manager, and he is certainly capable of being our first choice here. But I have had to change formation, and it makes me nervous. I'm actually using one that myself, Zealand and Clates reviewed on a video on Zealand's channel. So hopefully that video is out by now, else this is going to be a really big spoiler. But basically, we have no good centre mids, so we're going for a we'll score 1 more than you kind of tactic. The guy who made it said it works really well when we reviewed it, so we are really putting this one to the test. On the opening day, we beat Villarreal 3-2, in a real we'll score 1 more than you kind of game. But we actually played really well defensively in a 2-1 win away at Atletico Madrid. But then we capitulated on Derby Day as we lost 3-0 to Real Betis, who exploited our lack of midfield. However, we also beat Osasuna 7-0 to restore my faith in the system, which actually was looking quite good defensively in most games. We kept 5 clean sheets in our opening 12 games of the season, incredibly putting us 3rd in the table, albeit 7 points behind the leaders, Real Sociedad. Personally, I did not think this team would be good enough to challenge for the La Liga title. But we might have a shot if we can get good results in this run of 6 games in a row against the other 6 teams in the league's top 7. It started out pretty well as we beat Valencia 3-1 away from home. But we began to falter as we lost 2-1 to Real Sociedad at home, and then when we travelled to Madrid, we also lost to Real 2-0. But results picked up a bit when we drew 1-1 at home against Barcelona, and against Atletico Madrid when they came to visit us as well. We did well to avoid defeat against Villarreal, which means we picked up 6 points from an available 18, which in truth is probably better than we should be getting. It does put us a good way off the title fight, but we are still just ahead of our other rivals for European spots. Speaking of Europe, after beating Bran in the qualifying round, we'd won every single game in the league phase, putting us on top of the pile and surely favourites for the trophy. Before the knockout rounds though, we went on a superb run. We beat our city rivals Real Betis at home 4-0 to claim victory on Derby Day and the bragging rights. This was part of a run of games where we had 5 wins in 5 to put us in the best possible form ahead of our games against Lubin from Poland and up to 2nd in the La Liga table, which is actually a little bit annoying. We're too far behind Real Madrid to challenge for the title, which we still need to win, but we aren't going to drop enough points to fall into the Europa League spots for next season. In the round of 16 first leg away at Lubin, Gustavo opened up the scoring before defensive midfielder Hodzic scored a second to double our lead before half-time. Julian Ors scored a banger in the second half to win the first leg 3-0. He then scored twice at home in a 4-0 win in the second leg to progress to the quarter-finals as 7-0 winners on aggregate. Swedish side Hammarby awaited us, and in Stockholm we made it look easy, as Gustavo opened up the scoring and then finished it off with a penalty before half-time to win the first leg 4-0. And the second leg was even better for us, moving us into the semi-finals, where we thought Fiorentina would be incredibly difficult. But once again, Gustavo proved to be our most effective goal scorer, as he picked up a brace, whilst Julian Ors scored a third in a comprehensive victory. In Florence though, Fiorentina scored first, making us a little nervous. But all the nerves dissipated when Cristiano got us back on level terms and Julian Ors gave us the lead in the second half. Fiorentina did manage to equalise on the night in the 87th minute, but we managed to score in the 90th minute to not just win on the night, but also 6-2 on aggregate. This means we'll be taking on Freiburg in the final. As for La Liga, nothing really changed, as we stayed in second place, qualifying for next season's Champions League, 11 points behind what seems to be an unstoppable Real Madrid. But now our focus turns to our second Conference League final. Remember, we did lose at this stage of the competition when we were managers of Villarreal and we lost to Chelsea. In the first highlight of the game, we worked the ball out wide with some quick passing to Andrade, who managed to finish underneath the keeper to give us the lead. The best part about this formation is that when you lose the ball in attack, there is immediately another player there to win it back straight away. This creates constant chances for us, although this one didn't end up troubling the keeper. But the tactic also creates mental overloads in the penalty area. So when Dimitru intercepted the ball and found Cristiano, he had the choice of 4 players within 10 yards of the goal, but he picked out Ors, who made it too. We tried a similar move from the other side of the pitch, but this time Ors was tripped up in the penalty area and the ref pointed to the spot. As is always the way in Football Manager, our right back has great penalty taking attributes and managed to extend our lead in the 35th minute. 2 minutes later, we had another chance as Hodzic carried the ball forwards, found Gustavo on the edge of the area, whose powerful effort went past the keeper. Despite the match stats being really even, the game is practically won at half-time. And if it wasn't, it must have been in the 47th minute when Kubik intercepted the ball, Gustavo helped it forwards, and Julian Ors scored his second and our 5th of the night. Obviously, we were feeling pretty sorry for Freiburg, so Bastian decided to be a gentleman and turn a cross into the back of his own net. But this upset our strikers, who wanted a 5-goal lead back. Dimitru put a ball over the top for Cristiano, who found Ors in the middle to complete his hat-trick. But he wasn't done there, as in the 60th minute, he got on the wrong side of a defender and finished for his 4th of the night. 6 minutes later, we made it 8-1 as Dimitru hit the post and Kubik picked up the scraps. And finally, in the 90th minute, substitute Zoran made it an incredible 9-1 on the night. Annoyingly, we couldn't get to double figures, but I still think this is one of the most convincing cup finals of all time, meaning we lift the Europa League trophy and add it to the cabinet. And given how good our season was, with La Liga still to win, it would be silly to leave the club. Now obviously, this formation gets goals. We have been unreal this season as 4 players hit 20 plus goals in all competitions. So if we can improve on what we have right now, we might actually be with a shot of winning La Liga next season. However, we are £7 million in debt, and we only have £25 million in transfer budget. So we could only afford to sign 3 squad players to replace some outgoing backups. So whilst we haven't made our first team any stronger, we have improved the overall squad. We opened up the season with a huge 4-1 win over Getafe, with Gustavo scoring our first goal. He also bagged in our Derby Day win away at Real Betis. Julian Ors grabbed himself a brace in a big win over our former club Villarreal, but our title credentials were dented by a 0-0 draw with Atletico, a 1-1 draw with Real Sociedad, and a 2-1 loss away at Osasuna. But it does keep us within touching distance of the top 2 with a game in hand. But when it came to playing them, we lost 2-0 away from home at Real Madrid, and after Lamine Yamal scored for Barcelona, we rescued a late draw in the 86th minute to earn ourselves a crucial point. But most of our other games were wins, like a 1-0 at Valencia and a 3-1 win over Real Sporting Gijón, which in the end moves us even closer to Barca and Real Madrid. So we just kept winning games. We battered Espanyol 4-0 away from home. Julian Ors scored a 93rd minute winner in a 3-2 win away at Alaves. Vlad Dumitru added to his goal tally as we beat Mallorca 4-0 away from home. And the icing on the cake was a monumental 7-1 win over Girona, also away from home. But somehow, Barca and Real were even better than us, and slightly extended their lead over us with 8 games to go. Weirdly, we'd had a really poor Champions League campaign, only winning 3 league phase games and finishing 19th in the table. We got past Sociedad in the playoff round, but lost to Inter on penalties in the round of 16. So with our focus fully on La Liga, we continued recording huge victories. Elche fell to a 4-0 defeat, and Real Sociedad were battered aside by the same scoreline. Betis were once again destroyed on Derby Day as we won 3-0, and we swept past Valencia, defeating Los Che 3-0. In fact, we won 9 games in a row after losing to Inter Milan, moving us up to second in the table, a single point behind Barcelona with 2 games to go. And guess who those 2 games are against? Barcelona and Real Madrid. Weirdly, they were Sevilla's last 2 fixtures of the previous 2 seasons as well, and we do actually have a very good record in those games. If we beat Real Madrid, we could win the title on the final day. And they almost had the perfect start to the match, as Endrick pinched the ball off our defender 25 seconds into the game, but we did well to defend and win the ball back before he could shoot. This allowed us to build out from the back and get the ball to Kubik, who found a low cross to Dumitru, and he fired it home to give us the lead inside of 60 seconds. 5 minutes later, and we were on the attack again. The clear corner was recycled, and Gustavo had a clear angle to shoot and score, doubling our lead. And before we could even get to the 15-minute mark, Andrade was making a run down the far side. His low cross did go through a few bodies, but it was put away by Julian Ors to make it 3-0. Comparatively, the rest of the half was incredibly boring with 0 highlights, but I don't really care. We are 3-0 up at half time. And 5 minutes into the second half, Real cleared a corner. But we recycled the ball and put it back in the mixer, where Andrade's shot took a huge deflection and went in the back of the net. As if Madrid's day couldn't get any worse, they then conceded a penalty, which Julian Ors was more than happy to score to make it 5-0. Real were able to pull back a consolation goal from our own defensive complacency, but it doesn't really matter, especially when they also decide to mess about at the back and gift us a goal. It is a historic victory that means we're just 1 win away from lifting the La Liga title. But we need to beat league leaders Barcelona in Barcelona. The first chance of the game fell to the Catalans from a throw-in. Garcia found Musa in the area, and his low, powerful shot ended up in the back of the net. But less than 60 seconds later, we were on the attack, as we worked the ball down the far side of the pitch. Kubik found Gustavo, who put in a low cross, and Ors managed to finish past the keeper. Buoyed by our goal, we wanted more, and we played some fast-paced passing through the midfield, once again getting the ball into the feet of Ors, who scored his second. But was he onside? Just. It's the tightest of calls, but we are in the lead. However, Barcelona were going to keep fighting, and somehow we kept out their header from a corner just before half-time. At the other end of the pitch, Ors was looking for his hat-trick, and in the second half, Lehmann put a cross into the middle, and the ball flew up into the air, but Ors' header went just wide. But as we were so aggressive in getting bodies forwards, we were exposed at the back, and we had to rely on our keeper to keep us in front. So it seemed pretty sensible for us to be wasting time as much as possible. However, in the 80th minute, it seemed like the moment was coming for Barcelona, as they got on the counter-attack, finding Lamine Yamal, but his cross was cleared. We then defended incredibly well to stop the shot and go on a counter-attack of our own. But because I told my players to waste time, Lehmann decided to retain possession rather than poke the ball through and missed a great opportunity to put the game beyond all doubt. We did have another chance though. As Barcelona committed more and more men forward to try and get a goal, we could try and thread the ball through the gaps. Ors was completely open in the middle of the penalty area, but somehow he didn't complete his hat-trick. But luckily for us, we had just about done enough. We are the champions of Spain with Sevilla, winning our 4th trophy of the video. This means we've got 8 seasons left to win just 4 more trophies. And luckily, some good teams are available. We could go back to Germany and apply for the Dortmund job, to try and win the DFB Pokal and the Europa League next season. Or we could head to France for the first time and take over at Marseille. But we're going to decide where to go in the next episode. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss it. 4 trophies in 8 seasons sounds really easy, right? Surely we aren't going to mess things up from this position.